At my own college graduation party, surrounded by friends celebrating my master's degree, my mom looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not that important." I was 30 years old. And I'd finally had enough. What I said back to her that night didn't just end our relationship, it exposed a family secret that destroyed everything they'd built, and honestly they deserved every bit of it. I'm Maya Castellanos, and for 3 decades, I was the family disappointment. Not because I was failing, I had just finished my master's in environmental engineering while working full-time at Blackstone Industries, but because I wasn't playing their game anymore. See, in the Castellanos family, success wasn't about actual achievement. It was about making everyone else look good while staying small enough not to threaten the hierarchy. That night, at what should have been my celebration, everything changed. Because sometimes when someone tries to make you feel invisible, the best response is to make sure they never forget you existed. Let me paint you the picture of that evening. It was Saturday, June 12th, at the Riverside Community Center in Millbrook Heights. I had rented the space myself, paid for it with my own money, sent out my own invitations, bought my own decorations. My parents, Esperanza and Roberto Castellanos, hadn't offered to help. They never did. But they showed up because appearances mattered to them more than breathing. The party was supposed to celebrate something huge. After 6 years of night classes, weekend seminars, and studying until 2 a.m. while maintaining my day job, I had finally earned my master's degree in environmental engineering from Riverside University. 6 years. That's how long it took me to complete a program that most people finish in 2, because I couldn't afford to quit working. I had bills to pay, rent to cover, and no family safety net to catch me if I fell. My friends were there, real friends who had watched me struggle through every late-night study session and every exam stress breakdown. There was Jasmine Rodriguez, my study partner who had become like a sister to me. Marcus Thompson, my colleague from Blackstone who had covered my shifts when I needed to attend important classes. Sarah Kim, my neighbor who had literally brought me coffee and sandwiches during finals week when I was too stressed to remember to eat. These people had seen me work for this moment. They understood what it meant. They were genuinely excited for me, taking photos, making toasts, asking about my plans for the future. The energy in the room was pure celebration, pure joy, pure recognition of hard work paying off. And then there were my parents. Esperanza Castellanos arrived wearing her usual armor, a black dress that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, jewelry that caught the light just right, and that smile. That practiced, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes but looked flawless in photographs. She was 58 years old and had spent the last 4 decades perfecting the art of looking successful without actually achieving anything herself. Roberto followed behind her like he always did, dressed in his expensive suit, checking his phone every 30 seconds like he had important business to attend to. He didn't. He hadn't worked a real job in over 15 years, not since his last consulting venture fell apart, but he maintained the illusion of being a busy, important businessman with the dedication of a method actor. They walked into my party like they own it, not like proud parents coming to celebrate their daughter's achievement, but like celebrities making an appearance at a charity event they didn't really want to attend. "Maya, darling," my mother said, air kissing me without actually making contact. "What a lovely little gathering you've put together." Little gathering. I had worked for 6 years for this moment. And she called it a little gathering. My father shook my hand. My own father shook my hand at my graduation party like I was a business acquaintance. "Congratulations on your degree," he said. Like he wasn't quite sure what I had accomplished or why it mattered. I tried to brush it off. I had learned over the years to manage my expectations when it came to my parents. They weren't the type to gush with pride or make speeches about how proud they were. They weren't huggers or criers or the kind of people who kept graduation photos on their mantels. I knew this about them. But what happened next, I wasn't prepared for. About an hour into the party, I was standing near the dessert table, talking to Jasmine about my job prospects post-graduation. Several companies had already reached out about potential positions, and I was feeling optimistic about my future for the first time in years. Maya's being modest, Jasmine was saying to a group that had gathered around us. She graduated summa cum laude while working full-time. That's incredible. Marcus chimed in. And she's already got 3 companies interested in hiring her. Environmental engineering is huge right now with all the green energy initiatives. I felt myself blushing. I wasn't used to being the center of positive attention, especially not from my family, but it felt good. It felt like validation for all those years of sacrifice and hard work. That's when my mother appeared beside me, seemingly out of nowhere. "Oh, are we talking about Maya's little school project?" she said with that laugh, that tinkling, dismissive laugh that I had heard my entire life whenever my achievements came up in conversation. The group went quiet. Jasmine shot me a look that said, "Did your mother just call your master's degree a school project?" But Esperanza wasn't done. She never was. "It's sweet that Maya keeps herself busy with these pursuits," she continued, waving her hand vaguely in my direction. "Though I do worry she's getting a bit old to still be playing student. Most people her age are focused on more serious things: marriage, children, building a real life." I felt my face get hot. This was my graduation party. These were my friends, people who respected and cared about me, and my mother was standing here undermining everything I had worked for. "Mom," I said quietly, trying to signal that this wasn't the time or place. But she kept going. She always kept going. I mean, it's nice that she finally finished this degree. But let's be realistic about what it actually means: environmental engineering. She said it like it was astrology or interpretive dance. How many people actually make a living doing that, and at 30? Shouldn't she be thinking about settling down instead of chasing these academic fantasies? Academic fantasies. My master's degree from a respected university in a field with growing job prospects was an academic fantasy. Marcus stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable but trying to defend me. "Actually, Mrs. Castellanos, environmental engineering is one of the fastest growing fields in." "Oh, that's sweet," my mother cut him off. "But Maya has always been a bit of a dreamer. Ever since she was little, she's had these grand ideas about changing the world and making a difference. It's adorable, really, but at some point, you have to come back to reality." I could feel my friends looking at me, waiting for me to say something, to stand up for myself. But I was frozen. This was the pattern, the dynamic I had grown up with. My mother would diminish me, and I would take it, because fighting back always made things worse. But then she said the thing that changed everything. Sarah Kim, sweet Sarah who barely knew my parents but was trying to be supportive, said, "Well, I think it's amazing what Maya has accomplished. Working full-time and going to school is really impressive." My mother turned to look at Sarah with that smile, that cold, perfect smile. "Impressive," she repeated. "I suppose that depends on your perspective. In our family, we've always believed that truly important people don't need to make such a big fuss about their little achieving. Maya has always struggled with understanding her place in the world. She thinks every small step she takes deserves a parade." She paused, letting that sink in. Then she looked directly at me, in front of all my friends, in front of everyone who had come to celebrate with me, and delivered the line that would haunt me forever. "The truth is, Maya, you're not that important." The room went silent, not just quiet silent, like someone had sucked all the air out of the space. I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead and the distant sound of traffic outside, but no one spoke, no one moved. My friends were staring at my mother like she had just slapped me across the face, which, emotionally, she had. Jasmine's mouth was literally hanging open. Marcus looked like he was trying to decide whether to say something or physically remove my mother from the premises. Sarah had taken a step closer to me, like she wanted to create a protective barrier. And me, I stood there for what felt like an eternity, feeling 30 years of suppressed anger and hurt and disappointment rising up in my chest like a tidal wave. But here's the thing about tidal waves: they don't just rise, they crash. I looked at my mother, this woman who had spent my entire life making me feel small, making me feel like nothing I did would ever be enough, making me feel like I should be grateful for scraps of attention and conditional love. I looked at my father, standing behind her like a shadow, saying nothing, doing nothing, enabling her like he always had. I looked at my friends, these incredible people who saw value in me, who celebrated my achievements, who believed in my worth as a human being, and for the first time in my life, I saw the situation clearly. It wasn't that I wasn't important. It was that they needed me to believe I wasn't important because my success, my happiness, my independence threatened the story they had built about themselves. I took a deep breath. And I said the words that would change everything. You're right, Mom. I'm not that important. Not to you, anyway. And you know what? That says everything about you and nothing about me. But don't worry after tonight. You'll never have to be bothered by my unimportant achievements again. Because I'm done. I'm done pretending that your opinion matters. I'm done making myself small so you can feel big. And I'm done protecting your secrets. She blinked, confused. What secrets? That's when I smiled, really smiled. For the first time that entire evening. Oh, you know exactly what secrets I'm talking about, Esperanza. Should I tell everyone here about where the money for your designer clothes really comes from? Should I explain to my friends why Dad hasn't worked in 15 years but you still live in that big house in Maple Ridge? Should we talk about Uncle Carlos and the business arrangements that keep your lifestyle afloat? My father went pale. Actually pale. My mother's perfect composure cracked for just a second, and I saw fear flash across her face. Maya, she said, her voice sharp with warning. No, I said, louder now. You wanted to talk about importance. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you've built your entire identity on looking successful while contributing absolutely nothing to the world. Let's talk about how you've spent years tearing me down because my actual achievements make your fake ones look pathetic. Let's talk about how you're so threatened by your own daughter's success that you have to sabotage it at her own graduation party. The room was still silent. But it was a different kind of silence now. It was the silence of people watching someone finally stand up to a bully. It was the silence of truth being spoken after years of lies. I turned to address my friends. These people who had shown me what real support looked like. I want you all to know, I said, that everything you've heard about my family's success is a lie. They don't own a successful business. They don't have impressive careers. They live off money that comes from sources they're too ashamed to admit to. And they've spent my entire life making me feel worthless because the truth of their own worthlessness is too painful for and to face. My mother was shaking now, whether from rage or fear, I couldn't tell. How dare you, she whispered. How dare I laughed, and it felt good. It felt like freedom. How dare I tell the truth about my own life? How dare I refuse to be ashamed of my real achievements while you parade around with your fake ones? How dare I finally say out loud what everyone in this family has known for years but been too scared to acknowledge? I took a step closer to her, and for the first time in my life, she stepped back. You came to my graduation party, I said, to remind me that I'm not important. Mission accomplished, Mom. I finally understand that I'm not important to you. But here's what you never understood: that's your loss, not mine. I am important. Important enough that 3 companies want to hire me. Important enough that these people came here tonight to celebrate with me. Important enough that I spent 6 years building a real career while you spent those same 6 years maintaining an illusion. The silence stretched on. My mother opened her mouth like she was going to say something, then closed it again. My father was still standing there like a statue, offering no support to either of us, which was exactly what I expected from him. Finally, my mother found her voice. If you think you can threaten us, she started. This isn't a threat, I interrupted. This is a promise. I'm done being your target. I'm done being your punching bag. I'm done pretending that your dysfunction is normal or acceptable. And most importantly, I'm done keeping your secrets to protect people who have never protected me. I turned back to my friends, who were watching this entire scene unfold with expressions ranging from shock to admiration to concern. I'm sorry you had to witness this, I told them. But I'm not sorry it happened. This has been 30 years in the making, and it was about time. Jasmine was the first to move. She stepped forward and put her arm around me. Maya, she said, you have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Marcus nodded agreement. That was The bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do. Sarah was looking at my parents with unconcealed disgust. I think you should leave, she said to them. This is Maya's night. And you've done enough damage. My mother drew herself up to her full height, trying to reclaim some dignity. We're family, she said to me. You can't just. Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me, I said. Family supports each other. Family celebrates each other's achievements. Family doesn't show up to graduations parties to tear down the graduate. You're not here as my family, you're here as my enemies. And I don't owe my enemies anything. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation. But for once in my life, she couldn't. I had taken the power back, and we both knew it. This isn't over, she said finally. Yes, it is, I replied. It's been over for years. I was just too scared to admit it. But I'm not scared anymore. They left. Finally, they left. My father followed my mother out of the community center without saying another word to me, without even looking back. Just like that. 30 years of pretending we were a normal family came to an end. The room stayed quiet for another minute after they were gone. Then Jasmine squeezed my shoulder. Are you okay? She asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. You know what? I said. I think I am. For the first time in my life, I think I actually am okay. And that's when the real celebration began. My friends surrounded me with hugs and words of support and questions about whether I needed anything. They helped me clean up the mess my parents had made, not just the emotional mess, but the actual mess. My mother had knocked over a cup of punch during her dramatic exit. And somehow that felt symbolic. As we were packing up the decorations and folding chairs, Marcus asked me the question I knew was coming. What did you mean about secrets? About Uncle Carlos and business arrangements? I looked around at these people who had proven their loyalty to me, who had stood by me during the worst confrontation of my life, who had seen my family at their absolute worst and still treated me with respect and love. That, I said, is a story for another day. But let's just say that everything you think you know about the successful Castellanos family is about to change. Because here's what my mother didn't realize when she decided to humiliate me at my own graduation party. I wasn't the scared little girl she had been controlling for decades anymore. I was a 30-year-old woman with a master's degree, a promising career, and absolutely nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you become very, very dangerous to people who have been lying about everything. The war between me and my parents had officially begun that night. But unlike every other conflict we'd ever had, this time I wasn't going to be the one backing down. This time, I was going to win. And the weapon I was going to use, the truth. The whole truth about who the Castellanos family really was and where their money really came from. My mother was right about one thing: I wasn't that important to them. But they were about to learn that they weren't that important to me either. And that realization was going to cost them everything. Before that explosive graduation night, my life with the Castellanos family looked picture perfect from the outside. We lived in this carefully constructed fantasy where everything had to appear successful, prosperous, and enviable to everyone watching. Growing up in Maple Ridge, one of Millbrook Heights' most prestigious neighborhoods, meant maintaining appearances was everything. Our house was a sprawling Tudor-style mansion with perfectly manicured gardens that my mother paid professionals to maintain weekly. The circular driveway always featured my father's leased BMW and my mother's Mercedes, both black, both spotless, both designed to scream success to anyone driving by. Inside, the house looked like a magazine spread. Esperanza had decorated every room with expensive furniture, original artwork, and those little touches that whispered money rather than shouted it. Crystal chandeliers, marble countertops, Persian rugs that cost more than most people's cars. Everything was always pristine, always photo-ready, because you never knew who might stop by. My parents' social calendar was packed with charity galas, country club events, and dinner parties with other families who played the same elaborate game of successful appearances. Esperanza would spend hours getting ready for these events, choosing the perfect dress, the right jewelry, ensuring every Detail projected the image of a woman who had everything figured out. Roberto maintained his own illusions. He had a home office with mahogany furniture and walls lined with business books he'd never read. He carried himself like a man with important meetings and crucial decisions to make. His phone was always buzzing with what he claimed were business calls, and he spoke in vague terms about consulting projects and investment opportunities. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. Successful parents, beautiful home, private school, education, vacations to Europe, memberships at exclusive clubs. Our Christmas cards were professionally photographed, our social media presence carefully curated to show only the highlights. But I learned early that in the Castellanos household, asking questions about how we afforded this lifestyle was forbidden. When I was 12 and asked why Dad didn't seem to go to an office like other fathers, I was told it was rude to discuss family business. When I wondered aloud why we sometimes had mysterious visitors who spoke only to my parents, behind closed doors, I was scolded for being nosy. The family hierarchy was clear. Esperanza was the queen, Roberto was her devoted subject. And I was expected to be the grateful princess who appreciated everything they provided without questioning the source. My role was to excel academically but not too much look presentable at family functions, and eventually marry someone from the right family to continue the cycle. For years, I played my part perfectly. I got good grades but didn't make a big deal about it. I attended their social events and smiled politely at their friends. I never asked uncomfortable questions about Uncle Carlos or why certain phone calls had to be taken in private. I thought this was normal. I thought every family had secrets they didn't discuss, financial arrangements that weren't quite what they seemed, and social circles built on mutual pretense rather than genuine friendship. It wasn't until I got older that I realized our perfect life was actually a carefully maintained house of cards, and I was the only one in the family actually building something real. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.